ever heard the term never stop learning? Me? No one else? No? No one? Okay, we've all heard it before. Now, full transparency moment. I am not the best reader. It's something I am constantly working on and getting better at and getting faster at, but truth be told, it is not natural for me to constantly be reading in order to learn. But lucky for you and lucky for me, that is not the only way to learn, especially now. One of the easiest ways and one of my favorite ways to learn and consume knowledge and education is through podcasts. And do not get me wrong, friends, I listen to all of the podcasts. I listen to reality show recap podcasts. I listen to trash TV podcasts. I listen to them all. However, I feel like there is such value in the free content that exists in the education space, in the business space, in the career space, and I want to share with you my favorite podcasts for always learning. So the first podcast that I have to recommend to you is Fourth's podcast. I know, personal plug here, but I just have to say it. We host a podcast called So What Do You Do? And the point of this podcast is to interview everyday professionals, finding out what they do from 9 to 5 and if it would be a good fit for you. So many of us in our life, we hear these job descriptions, product manager or company coordinator, all these obscure job descriptions that we have no idea what they mean. And then we're just launched into the workplace and we're expected to know what we want to do with our life. So I sit down with everyday professionals and ask them, what do they actually do? So that is the first podcast I would recommend to continue learning, especially if you're someone who is wondering, what do I want to do with my life? The second podcast I would recommend is How I Built This by Guy Raz of NPR Radio. How I Built This is kind of taking a different spin on the workplace by focusing on entrepreneurs, to makers, to anyone who's created something from scratch. So this is not necessarily focusing on the 9-to-5er, but it's people that have started something new. And Guy Raz is a fabulous interviewer. He really uncovers the untold story. They talk about the bankruptcies, the lessons learned, etc., etc. It's not all butterflies and roses. And that podcast will really teach you things to think through when you're starting something new. The third podcast I would recommend is The School of Greatness by Lewis Howes. The thing I love about Lewis's podcast is that he interviews specifically athletes, people in the sports world who have gone above and beyond and really honed into this word called greatness. He talks about not just greatness in their sports though, and not just greatness in their success, but really what they would share as their legacy, what they believe brought them to their success, right? They would tell their kids and their grandkids and all of you as listeners. So School of Greatness is a perfect mix of education and motivation, plus just fabulous storytelling. The next podcast I would recommend, podcast number 4, would be Unlocking Us by Brené Brown. Unlocking Us is basically free therapy. Brené Brown is a world-renowned researcher on shame and vulnerability, and she really sits down with some fabulous guests to really uncover or unlock us from the inside out. And she asks great questions of her guests and really helps you to reflect on yourself in the personal development space. If you love learning about personality tests and personality types and bettering you and thinking about your soul, then that is definitely the podcast for you. Okay, lastly, the 5th podcast that I would recommend for all of you career enthusiasts here and the learners out there is a podcast called Passages Podcast. Passages is a podcast that was started by a good friend of mine, Chloe Belangia, and she is fabulous. She focuses on the young professional, uncovering what it's like to be a young professional, how to be successful as a young professional, and to take ownership of not only your life, but your career, your path, your dreams, your ambitions, all of the above. Chloe and I actually both went to Georgia Tech and are female entrepreneurs. She does Passages as a side hustle, but I highly recommend her podcast. And if you listen to episode 2, you'll hear a little bit from yours truly. So there you have it. Those are the 5 podcasts that I would recommend to continue learning. And especially if you're not a reader like me, something that you can plug your earpods in, go on a walk, do your exercise, sit on your couch, anything. Thank you for being here. If you loved this episode and or you loved any of the podcasts already, please comment below and let us know others that we need to know about. Hit that like button, be sure to subscribe, and better yet, send this to a fellow career enthusiast just like yourself. We give all tips and tricks and resources to our official 4th fam. If you too want to be part of the official 4th fam and get hired in the job of your dreams, please join our waitlist for our signature method, Get Hired Bootcamp. We are building our waitlist as we speak. I have linked that below for you. We can't wait to see you here next week when we release our new video on Tuesday. And so until then, go forth and keep learning.